It's time for the fourth and final part of our big AJW series, and we're going back to Kyoko Inoue. Mainly we're looking at her major battles in 1996 against Manami Toyota, both in singles and tag competition, as she goes for the red belt, although we'll be starting with Kyoko going up against someone else we've looked at quite a bit in this series. Kyoko, just like damn near everyone here, was one of the very best wrestlers in the world in the mid-90s, so naturally the standard of action is going to be ludicrously high. Still, there's something else we have to cover in this last part, that being how everything completely fell apart for Zenjo in 1997. If you're ready to fight, then get yourself settled in, as we're about to go. We left Kyoko Inoue at the Destiny show on 2nd of September, where she finally managed to score a big victory against her mentor and friend, Bull Nakano. Not quite as big a passing of the torch moment as the main event Akira Hokuto vs Manami Toyota match, but not far off. Zenjo's last big show of the year, Monday Night Sensation at the Sumo Hall on 4th of December, we'll see Kyoko Inoue in the semi-main event once again, this time against an opponent who she actually hasn't faced a whole lot in singles up to this point, Aja Kong. Kyoko and Aja have had a couple of singles matches, but generally these two have been about tag competition, and indeed a part of that includes teaming with each other. After all, both were part of Bull's Gokumonto, or Prison Gang stable, and together Kyoko Inoue and Aja Kong won the 1992 Tag League. So the rivalry between Kyoko and Kong isn't necessarily as heated as the one that Kon and Toyota have. There's a lot of respect going into this one, although Kyoko's obviously looking for another big victory, seeing as she's never beaten Kong in singles competition. There is something else we should also go into quickly, of course, something that happened in between Destiny and Monday Night Sensation, that being the trip that both Kyoko and Aja took over to the States to wrestle in the WWF, mainly at 1995 Survivor Series in an 8-woman tag that also saw Lioness Asuka, Saki Hasegawa, Tomoko Watanabe and Chapurita Asari come over to team with Alundra Blaze and Bertha Faye. As usual, there's not much rest for the Zenjo troupe. All of these wrestlers took part in the big 18th November AJW Wrestle Marine Pad show in Yokohama, before quite literally getting straight on a plane to the States to wrestle at Survivor Series in Maryland on the 19th. While the Joshi stars are understandably jet-lagged, the match is kind of short and the commentary is awful. Thanks Mr. Perfect, they still put on a pretty good showing, with Aja Kong set for a feud over the women's title with Blaze being the sole survivor and Kyoko being the second to last eliminated for Blaze's team. Kyoko also did wrestle at the next night's Raw taping, teaming with Blaze for a loss against the team of Kong and Watanabe, while Aja stayed one further night to tape her rather legendary squash of Asari, where she broke her nose with the Uraken. Alas, by the time that this match airs, Alundra Blaze has gone from WWF and is about to throw the women's title in the trash on Nitro, so the relationship between WWF and AJW was short-lived. By all accounts, there was nothing but major respect and friendship between both of these rather battle-hardened crews. With all that gone through, let's go back to Japan, to the fabled Sumo Hall, and to this big clash. We've had a close-up of the bell being struck, the MC is elongating his introductions as usual, the streamers are being cleared, and the stage of battle is set. After a little hesitancy, this match starts with a handshake before the pair get going with kicks and chops. Kong wins the first battle and hits a big running knee, but Kyoko counters an Irish whip with the springboard elbow. Still, Kong reverses a whip herself and hits a corner clothesline. Another counter, this time from Kyoko, and she hits the vaulting DDT, but Aja beats Kyoko to the punch on another whip, hitting a Vader attack. Pretty clear from the off just how even this match is going to be, I'd say. Aja hits a jumping elbow and works a chin lock, Kyoko finds the ropes but soon gets knocked down by chops from Aja, and again, the whips aren't working. This time Kyoko counters with the springboard dropkick, and from here she tries to get Aja up in the surfboard. She doesn't quite manage it, but instead she works a camel clutch. It's a struggle for Kong, but she eventually gets up and falls back to break the hold. This only offers a brief respite as Kyoko's able to lock in again, this time pretty deep. Aja seems to fade a little, but eventually breaks it with a chin crusher, finding the ropes when Kyoko tries a third time. Kyoko hits a DDT and tries for a lariat, but Aja reverses with an atomic drop variation, followed by blasting Kyoko with slaps and a big palm strike off a whip. Aja poses a bit as the action spills outside, Kyoko getting rammed into a table and some seats, before Aja actually does one of Kyoko's favourites, a big run through the sumo hall audience for a clothesline. Back in now, and Aja hits a Hanin vertical suplex, followed by the stalling pile driver, finally now taking control in the way that's led her to so much success in the past. Aja's now trying to put Kyoko to sleep, making her fade enough in the end to score a near fall out of it, and a slam is followed by the big splash off Brett's rope for another one. Aja applies the sleeper again, but this time Kyoko's a bit closer to the ropes and ultimately she's able to find them. Not that this stops Aja from landing some nasty kicks to the back, with a particularly nasty one thrown in response to a springboard elbow attempt. While Aja is very much in control, Kyoko gets a little respite by shifting her weight on a backdrop, trying for a surprise fall. However, Aja blocks a missile dropkick. From there, Aja goes up top herself, and while Kyoko tries to do the run-up suplex, she gets pushed away and Kong hits a huge missile dropkick of her own. It's always something when the daughter of King Kong goes aerial. Kyoko does finally manage a reply when Aja goes for it again. She does get pushed away initially, but she is able to hit the run-up head scissors, landing it more like a kick, slightly ugly, but enough to take Kong down. Kyoko tries to counter another whip by running up the corner, but gets pushed to the floor, and Kong goes aerial again with a massive tope. Not something often seen, but it's magnificent. Kong remains in control and now looks to close it out, readying up the glove, picking Kyoko up, doing the little slaps. However, the Uraken and a lariat are dodged. Kyoko's still got fight, but she gets hit with a power slam for a near fall. Kyoko gets positioned up top, Aja looking for the big water wheel drop, but we get another telling counter. Kyoko catches Aja out and hits a sunset bomb, and she's finally right back in the match as we get to the 15-minute mark. Kyoko looks for the Niagara driver, but can't quite get Aja up and instead hits a couple of lariats. With Kong sufficiently weakened, Kyoko goes for it again. This time she does hit the Niagara driver, however Kong kicks out. Not to be denied, Kyoko goes straight for it again and does manage to hit a second Niagara driver, but still Kong will not be beaten. Kyoko must think that surely it's going to be third time lucky. However, this time Kong's able to get off her shoulders and the Uraken echoes around the sumo hall. Kong has had so much taken out of her low, she cannot take advantage of her big shot, and it takes time for both wrestlers to get to their feet. In the end, Kyoko is there first, hitting another big lariat for a near fall, and again trying for Niagara. This time Kong reverses, and while Kyoko dodges an Uraken, Aja dodges a clothesline and makes a last stand, hitting 3 huge backdrop drivers, one after the other. Kyoko just kicks out, and Aja knows that she has to finish this now. She takes Kyoko up top and hits the big water wheel drop, but once again Kyoko survives. Aja goes up top for the big back elbow, but Kyoko gets her own surge, German suplexing Aja from the top with a big show of strength for a near fall. Again she tries for a regular one, Kong clinging on for dear life with elbows, but when Aja desperately tries another Uraken, Kyoko blocks it, hits the German, and while that doesn't get it, she quickly picks Kong up, hits the third Niagara driver, and with that she gets the win. Kyoko Inoue gets her big singles victory over Aja Kong in 19 minutes 56, and once the pair have recovered, there's a bit of a show of respect, Kong getting on the mic to congratulate Kyoko on her victory. Once again, this is a match where in the main, you simply have to be in awe of Aja Kong. Kyoko is as usual pretty freaking great here. All that energy, the power, the sheer athleticism. There's certainly some wild moments in here where Kyoko shows what she can do, and she really does a great job of getting chucked around. Still, it's Kong who builds another masterwork, a picture-perfect, dominant monster who ever so gradually gets whittled down, getting ever more slower, eventually becoming desperate, and finally losing. The selling, the details of it, the way Kong builds it all up, and everything just happens at the right time, from the frustrated glares to the explosion of backdrops, the absolute brilliance of that Hail Mary Hurricane and how she collapsed from the damage and the effort. She is something else. If you had to pick the best wrestler overall in Zenjo, then of course you have the wrestlers who had particularly amazing years, Hokuto, Toyota, and now Kyoko. But the consistent answer, the one who is simply always there at the top? It is still Aja, even if in many ways this is a passing of the baton. Not the torch, but this shows the direction that Zenjo is going to go in. In 1996, Kyoko Inoue is going to be the main contender for the red belt that, at the end of tonight, is going to be around the waist of Manami Toyota. And we should most definitely look forward to what they're going to do against each other. We do get a further indicator of the obvious direction that AJW are going to go in the match that we used as a bit of background for talking about the state of Zenjo's business in the third part, Manami Toyota's 30-match gauntlet against the rest of the company on Christmas Day 1995. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted that while Toyota faced most everybody twice over the 30 minutes, she actually faced Kyoko Inoue 3 times, back to back to back. The results of those 3 matches were quite symbolic too. Kyoko was Toyota's 20th opponent, and she was the first to actually pin her, using the Niagara Driver. In match 21, Kyoko went for the Niagara Driver again, however this time Toyota countered with a roll-up and managed to pin Kyoko in just 16 seconds. And from there the 22nd match was a frenzied draw, both hitting big shots like the top rope slam and a German suplex before the bell rang. It's not long before Kyoko gets the chance to take the red belt from Toyota. It's announced in February that Toyota and Kyoko are going to headline the year's big wrestling Queendom show on March 31st at the Yokohama Arena in front of what's announced as 12,500 people. We have a fair bit of interpromotional action going on through the card. A Vale Chudo match involving Yumiko Hotta in the semi-main, one that she wins this time. Appearances from FMW stars Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota, and a bunch of younger talents in the first half of the show. Future notable talents like Azumi Hyuga, Yoshiko Tamura, Misei Genki, Yuki Miyazaki, Ran Yu Yu and The Bloody are all on here, while this card also features Saki Hasegawa's retirement match. The main event match itself is not exactly one that needs hyping up, especially not considering what these two did when they last fought for the title in May of 1995 and ended up going all the way to a 60-minute draw at Korakuen Hall. For all we know, there may not be a clear winner this time either. But in any case, the red belt's up for grabs, along with the honour of being the ace of Zenjo. As is often the case, we're not wasting any time. Toyota rushes Kyoko and goes for a dropkick, but Kyoko's ready. She dodges and immediately locks Toyota into a huge giant swing. However, once she's finished swinging Toyota around, the champ is quick to recover, locking in a pretty long rolling cradle in response. It's a hot start indeed, and things restart with a bit of a test of strength. Kyoko definitely has an advantage in this department, locking the arms and throwing Toyota, but Manami counters an Irish whip with a vaulting dropkick. For her part, Kyoko counters an Irish whip with the springboard elbow, and we get into stretching. Kyoko does her favoured surfboard, complete with some posing, following that up with a typically deep Boston Crab. Once Kyoko's finished, she looks to work Toyota's arm. The champ counters with a lucha arm drag off the ropes, but Kyoko remains on top, quickly cinching a camel clutch. Toyota slowly reverses a body scissors, applying a leg lock, getting more and more torque before she's able to get Kyoko down, wrap up the legs and, with a bit of her own posing, apply her inverted deathlock STF, following that with a bow and arrow. Toyota does enough damage with her stretching that once it's released, Kyoko needs to roll out of the ring in order to get away from it. Toyota quickly continues the assault once the challenger gets back in, but then she gets reversed on a whip to the corner, with Kyoko then hitting the vaulting DDT. Again though, the reversals come thick and fast, Toyota now responding with a springboard dropkick after getting whipped, following that with another missile dropkick. Toyota keeps control, slamming Kyoko, but this time her trip up top is interrupted by the run-up suplex, and while Toyota is able to push Kyoko to the floor when she tries for the run-up elbow, Kyoko gets the biggest reversal so far, dodging the no-hand somersault plancher, Toyota crashing and burning quite nastily on the floor. The fight continues outside, Kyoko clotheslining Toyota over the guardrail and the table before throwing her back in and looking for a missile dropkick. Toyota's eventually able to meet her on the top rope, and although Kyoko goes to reverse with her super slam, Toyota gets behind her, pushes her off, and hits the Enzui missile dropkick, pressing the advantage with 2 consecutive moonsaults for a near fall. She looks to surprise, going for the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex relatively early. However, Kyoko gets behind, hitting Toyota with a big release German suplex. The Niagara Driver attempt doesn't come off, but Kyoko is able to reverse the Manami roll attempt with a regular powerbomb for a near fall. And yet when Kyoko then goes for Niagara again, Manami does counter with the roll, again getting close to the win. After a brief pause, Toyota tries to go up top again, Kyoko countering this time with the run-up head scissors, followed by her own Enzui missile dropkick. At many stages in this bout, it just feels like watching 2 mirrors wrestling each other. They are both so alike in many ways, but Toyota's the one doing the big old bridge out. Kyoko looks for one of her strongest weapons, applying the Spider Nest STF. It gets the crowd going, Kyoko really locking it in deep at points, but eventually the champ's able to find the ropes. Toyota clings to the ropes to avoid a German, reversing an Irish whip. This time when Kyoko goes for the springboard, Toyota knocks her out of the ring, then executing the dropkick to the floor, followed by another one of Kyoko's favourite spots, going all the way up the entrance to deliver a clothesline. Toyota clearly enjoyed that, and goes for it again. However, this time she runs straight into a belly-to-belly, and Kyoko shows the champ just how it's done with a huge run, ending with a lariat. We're at a stage where both are close to victory, but Kyoko's got a shot right here, signalling for another whopping lariat. This time, Toyota reverses into the Japanese Ocean suplex, but Inoue's feet are on the ropes. Toyota then gets her up on her shoulders, not quite getting all of it, but still hitting the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex, and it's only 2. Toyota looks for a more decisive cyclone, taking Kyoko up top to hit it. Kyoko gets out of there, and while she gets knocked back, she gets a boost and rips Toyota off the corner with a huge release German suplex. There's a bit of a recovery period, but Kyoko's soon up, hitting a big lariat to Toyota on the ropes. While Toyota dodges a second one, she gets caught on the rebound and turned inside out. Is this the big moment? After a near fall, Kyoko picks Toyota straight up, gets her on the shoulders, hits the Niagara Driver, and the champion survives. Naturally, Kyoko goes for it again. This time Toyota gets out, almost getting reversed into a German and getting put onto the ropes. However, when Kyoko goes for another springboard, Toyota hits a decisive strike, a huge running dropkick right to the back, poleaxing the challenger. Toyota quickly gets Kyoko up on the shoulders and hits a second cyclone. Once again the challenger's able to survive, but Toyota has something else up her sleeve. She wraps up Kyoko's arms, gets her up onto the shoulders, and brings her down in a vicious sit-out powerbomb. And that brand new move is enough for the 3 count. Manami Toyota defends the title, pinning Kyoko Inoue in 21 minutes 23 with the rarely seen Japanese Ocean Bomb, a different move to the Queen Bee Bomb. Again, there's a show of respect afterwards, a handshake and embrace, and also an understanding that it's unlikely to be too long before Kyoko Inoue is fighting for the title again. So I would say that this match, while not an all-time great, is a very good one. As I said in the recap, it does very much feel like a mirror match at times. Kyoko and Toyota are both bringing a similar intensity, they're both throwing bombs all the way, forever gutsing it out on each other's big moves, never waiting too long to reply with something else. I suppose that one trouble with it is that we have already seen this pair reach an utterly ludicrous high. What they did in May 95 at Korakuen Hall was simply something else, and they couldn't quite get there again. Still, it's damn good, especially with the occasional mimicking actions, and the general psychology does follow on quite well from the May 95 match. Back then, neither wrestler had a move in their arsenal that could defeat the other. The Cyclone and the Niagara Driver simply weren't enough. It stands to reason that one of these wrestlers would need some sort of new technique to get the job done, similar to what's often seen in the King's Road style that Zenjo is so similar to. And in the end, it was Toyota who was able to use a new technique, although the crowd do seem a bit underwhelmed by it. Perhaps that's why this one isn't a common finisher for Toyota. I may have expected to see the Queen Bee Bomb, the Northern Lights bomb Toyota earned from defeating Hokuto, as the finish here. But hey ho, it is still damn fine wrestling, not the best match we've ever seen from this pair, but a great way to spend 20 or so minutes. For our next bout, we go over to tag competition and the continued success of Kyoko and Takako, the double Inoues. In the second part, we saw them defeat Manami Toyota and Saki Hasegawa in a classic, the match where Kyoko got that first big pin on Toyota. In the time since, they've both lost and won the 3WA tag belts. In September of 95, they dropped them to the LCO team of Mima Shimoda and Akira Hokuto, the Dangerous Queen getting her mojo back after the big loss to Toyota at Destiny. However, in January of 96, the double Inoues reclaimed the belts in another classic match, one that certainly warrants a strong mention. As with all tag title bouts in AJW, it's 2 out of 3 falls, and while Hokuto was able to pin Inoue to score the first fall, Kyoko Inoue would take her revenge this time out. She pinned Shimoda for the equaliser, and then, at just under the half-hour mark, she pinned Hokuto to win the decisive fall following the combination Niagara Driver and Chokeslam. So now Kyoko Inoue has her own big victory against the Dangerous Queen, and the double Inoues become 3-time 3WA tag champs. It's most certainly another match from this period that's worth checking out amongst, well, all the others. For the next big match we're covering, we go to Champions Night in Sapporo on 22nd of June, where the Inoues defend against a team that hadn't wrestled together for about 18 months, seemingly going their separate ways. But now they're back. The Tokyo Sweethearts. Mima Shimoda and Manami Toyota originally teamed back in their junior days, and while the team continued until around 95 or so, Shimoda's allegiances were with LCO, and then Toyota had her own stable, that being Freedom Force with Saki Hasegawa. Now they're back, and they're looking to do something they never quite managed the first time around, winning the top tag titles. And of course it's another chapter in the rivalry between the singles champ and her top challenger, so there's going to be plenty to break down. Takako and Shimoda get things started, kicking away at each other and doing some ring rope clotheslines, what you would expect from the two rougher members of the team. Takako does a reversal into a neat side suplex, but Shimoda dodges both Inoues on a whip, and Toyota hits a missile dropkick on the champs. Unfortunately, when Toyota goes for the big plunger, she falters and ends up hitting her partner. Takako is quick to isolate Shimoda, taking her for a trip to the cheap seats and choking her with a chair, before getting her back in the ring where Kyoko greets her with double chops. Shimoda's able to reply with a neckbreaker drop, and while Kyoko tries to do the one up the post, Shimoda pushes her off and hits a sweet flying head scissors for a near fall. Toyota gets in and tries for the missile dropkick, but Kyoko catches her and does the giant swing, the crowd counting along, and Takako comes in for a quick side suplex attempt, followed by a jumping DDT. The Inoues look for another double team, throwing Toyota to the ropes. However, she comes back off with a springboard sunset flip, and as Shimoda holds Kyoko, Manami Toyota gets a surprise 3 count on Takako Inoue. The first falls over just like that, in a mere 3 minutes 31, and suddenly the champions are behind thanks to a combination of both Toyota's exceptional speed and ability, and Shimoda's knack of being in the right place at the right time. Takako's quick to hit Toyota hard at the start of the second fall with a butterfly suplex, nasty running kicks and a DDT, and from here she grounds Toyota, starting with a sleeper. Kyoko comes in and the pair hit a double DDT, Kyoko following up with a torture rack throw and torture rack backbreaker, before she does her favourite surfboard complete with dancing and Takako sneaking in a few kicks. Takako comes in and repeatedly cinches in a Boston Crab before cross-facing Toyota, again making sure to get a few claws and pulls in. The champ is very much the face in peril at this point. Toyota finds the ropes again, but the punishment continues, both Inoue's landing hammer blows on her. However, she finds a way out with a Manami roll, making the tag to Shimoda. Mima quickly gets rough with a hair takedown and some chokes with the foot, but she's unable to execute a pile driver. While she kicks away at Kyoko, she responds with a snap fisherman suplex for 2. Takako comes in, but Shimoda's still very much at it, countering a whip with a springboard body attack, followed by a pile driver to bring Toyota back. She quickly reverses a clothesline and applies the rolling cradle, looking for a moonsault afterwards, but getting slammed off. Takako takes control once more with a backdrop hold for 2, but Toyota ducks the Takako panic knee, the heel Inoue instead jumping into a Shimoda dropkick. However, Takako gets her knees up on a Toyota moonsault. Takako hits a big backdrop, but Toyota does the bridge out, in trouble but still defiant. Takako connects with Takako Panic straight after, and Toyota's only saved by Shimoda just wriggling out of Kyoko's clutches to break up the pin. Shimoda's still saving her when the Inoues try for the Niagara chokeslam, but while Toyota tries to get Takako up top, she gets nailed by a super chokeslam. Toyota still survives, now wriggling out of Kyoko's Niagara driver, but a Manami roll attempt results in a powerbomb. Toyota still manages to get a roll-up from another Niagara attempt for a near fall. She goes up top now for the missile dropkick, but Kyoko's ready and runs up for the big suplex, proceeding from there to nail Toyota with 2 vicious lariats on the ropes. Toyota manages to dodge a third, but as she runs back in, Kyoko takes her head off on the rebound, and as Takako holds off Shimoda, this is enough for Kyoko to pin Toyota and score the equaliser. The second fall's finished in 15 minutes 01, and the scores are level. Toyota spent a long time behind in this fall, and while Shimoda did try to stop the Inoues, she wasn't able to in the end. They took control right from the start of this fall, and basically didn't let up until they won it. We go to the third fall with Toyota very much still recovering, but Kyoko can't help but be a face, encouraging Toyota to get back to her best. When they do clash, Kyoko quickly overpowers her with a double wristlock takedown, grounding her and applying a half crab, followed by both Inoues taking turns on a camel clutch. Takako's is naturally rougher. Finally, Toyota is able to get out with a springboard dropkick in the corner, bringing Shimoda in. She flies out with a very cool chokeslam type move, impact chokeslam, hitting some running stomps and applying a figure 4 leg lock to Takako, which looks particularly nasty considering Mima has legs that would shame Xenia on a top. Toyota hits a top rope splash while Shimoda holds on to the figure 4, and while Takako does eventually reach the ropes, Shimoda keeps control with a tree of woe and more stomps, and makes sure to stop any hope of Kyoko tagging in by taking her out when Takako tries a desperate roll-up. Shimoda applies a Boston Crab, giving Toyota a chance to hit a running dropkick, and she continues her focus from there on Takako's legs. Kyoko comes back in to get some revenge for the knock off the apron, but the challengers are still in control, Shimoda now simply stepping on Takako's head, just so that she can hear better. The punishment finally stops when Takako reverses a whip and gets out of the way of a springboard body attack, hitting some grounded slaps and some punches in the corner, also making sure to remind the audience that they're number 1. Awesome, isn't she? Takako hits a DDT and a few more stomps, bringing Kyoko back in after a quite stiff slap. While Shimoda tries to continue fighting her, Kyoko hits a nasty release German suplex, following that with a whip to the corner and the vaulting DDT. Kyoko locks in a nasty surfboard stretch, bringing Takako back after she's finished. Shimoda counters a side suplex with a roll-up, but takes a nasty chokeslam off the top when she tries to go up. Shimoda finally manages to hit a double neckbreaker drop on the Inoues, and Toyota comes in for some chaos, holding the champs on the outside while Shimoda hits a tope. Toyota then goes in herself, and while she doesn't immediately hit it, she eventually does the no-hand somersault plunger, and the Sweethearts are back in the match. Shimoda hits a missile dropkick on Kyoko for a near fall, but the Sweethearts miss a double splash. However, Shimoda is able to intercept Kyoko up top to hit a super butterfly suplex. Kyoko escapes a tiger suplex and catches Shimoda off the ropes with a chokeslam, but Toyota makes a crucial interference when Kyoko tries the run-up elbow. She catches her, holds off Takako, and Shimoda hits the Death Lake driver. However, Kyoko is just able to get her shoulder up. With Kyoko in heaps of trouble, a tiger suplex pin is just about interrupted by Takako, and Toyota is now officially back in. Takako thwarts a cyclone attempt with a backdrop, and the pair try for the Niagara chokeslam, interrupted by Shimoda. However, Kyoko does catch Toyota up top, hitting the huge super slam. It's a near fall after the big bridge out, and Toyota is soon able to reverse an Irish whip into the Japanese Ocean suplex for a near fall of her own. Takako runs interference, attacking off the top with the knee, Kyoko then hitting a clothesline and trying for Niagara. She hits it, but Toyota just kicks out. The double Inoues try to finish it, and this time they hit the huge Niagara chokeslam, and this time Shimoda is just about able to break up the pin, despite Takako's best efforts. They look for the move again. This time Shimoda interrupts with a neckbreaker drop to Kyoko, while Takako gets shoved to the floor. And now, with Toyota back in the ascendancy, she hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex, but Kyoko kicks out once more. The Sweethearts set themselves up, and we get a huge assisted cyclone, Shimoda spiking Kyoko down, and Takako somehow just managing to break this up. With this, Shimoda takes Takako to the outside, leaving Toyota to finish this off. Manami hits the Japanese Ocean bomb, and this time Kyoko just about manages to survive it. However, there is nothing left. Toyota gets her on the ropes, puts her on the shoulders, hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex, and with Takako nowhere to be found, the match is over. The Tokyo Sweethearts win the 3WA Tag Team titles in 32 minutes 33 by 2 falls to 1. Another pretty damn good tag match here, one where I would say that generally the spotlight really belongs to Mima Shimoda. She shines a hell of a lot in this bout, especially in the third fall. The most crucial part of the whole thing may be the beating she initially takes in the decider, but the way she then powers back not just to get back into the match, but to give the Sweethearts a crucial advantage was something else. It is a different dynamic perhaps, one you may not expect, but an understanding that while Toyota may be the red belt champ, tag wrestling is where Shimoda really shines, and in many ways she is the aggressor of the team, telling the main story while Toyota is, quite often, the face in peril. Of course, it's all great stuff. Takako Inoue similarly is never not awesome, and we get some absolutely vicious exchanges between her and Mima, and all the while we have the continuation of the overarching story between Kyoko and Toyota. Another beat where, once again, Manami Toyota gets the better of the would-be ace. At this point, some things have to change for Kyoko Inoue, and there is one thing that does change after this bout. The double Inoues don't try to get those belts back. They will still team up and they will still wrestle together, but if Kyoko is going to overcome Manami Toyota and eventually get that red belt, she has to focus on that entirely. It's the only way that she will become the Ace of Zenjo. As mentioned in the previous part, Kyoko Inoue got all the way to the final of 1996's Japan Grand Prix. However, she ended up losing that final to Aja Kong, who unsuccessfully challenged for Toyota's title on the 6th of October. On the same night, Kyoko faced Yumiko Hotta in a number 1 contenders match, and while Hotta was able to dish out the usual leg-based punishment, Kyoko came through the bout, guaranteed to face the winner of the Kong-Toyota match. And so, on December the 8th, a little over a year after Manami Toyota won the red belt from Dynamite Kansai, Kyoko Inoue is going to get another opportunity. It'll be at the same venue that Toyota won the title. The real Earnest marks Zenjo's second trip to Sumo Hall, and it's a success with a legitimate sellout of 10,500, a semi-main dream tag partnership of Aja Kong and Dynamite Kansai defeating Takako Inoue and Mariko Yoshida, Momo Nakanishi winning the 1996 Rookie of the Year, the also mentioned in the last part defeat of Yumiko Hotta in her Vale Tudo rematch against Rosina Elenia, and several other solid solid turns on the card. As for the main event, well, if Kyoko Inoue is ever going to be the Ace of Zenjo, surely it has to happen tonight. She's put everything she has on this one, but what remains to be seen is if she can pull out something we've not seen before in order to take down the Flying Angel and at last win the red belt. I should quickly pause here for a note on watching these bouts. Originally, the upload of this match I watched was from AJW's TV show, and it had about 8 minutes cut out of it. However, I found the whole match, and indeed the whole real Earnest show, thanks to Roy Lucier. If you want to watch classic Joshi, Puroresu, Lucha, territory stuff, all sorts, particularly full TV episodes and cards, Roy Lucier is your guy. His channels are the best, and there'll be a link. Anyway, in the words of Chef John, let's go ahead and get started. We don't get the normal speedy opening, the pair circling each other, but when they do go in for a test of strength, Toyota instead opts for a lucha arm drag, holding on and trying for a flying arm scissors that doesn't come off, getting stomped by Kyoko. Toyota counters a whip with a vaulting dropkick, but a whip of her own is countered by Kyoko's springboard elbow. We get another whip counter, this time Toyota hitting a springboard body attack, but then missing a missile dropkick. Kyoko grabs her and applies the giant swing, going into a half crab, and from here Kyoko does a torture rack backbreaker and torture rack throw. This torture rack trilogy is completed on the outside. Kyoko lifts Toyota into position and chucks her onto the table. Ouch. Back in now, and Kyoko continues the work with her favourite surfboard stretch, riding the waves as normal, doing even more surfboard stretching afterwards. However, once that's done, Toyota does manage a comeback with the springboard dropkick, followed by another missile dropkick to take it outside again. As always, turnabout is fair play. Toyota gets revenge for that earlier table spot by side-slamming Kyoko onto the wood. We're back in and working ground again. Kyoko takes down Manami, who goes into full guard, but Kyoko powers through with slaps and a slam. However, Toyota counters an Irish whip and greets Kyoko with the old 5 fingers across the face on her return. Toyota puts Kyoko in the corner for a couple of big running drop kicks, and from there Kyoko's struggling and managing to find the ropes, evading a German suplex. However, she reverses an Irish whip herself, hitting the vaulting DDT in the corner. Kyoko applies a half crab, perhaps using it for a bit of recovery more than anything, wiping the mostly gone by now face paint out of her eyes, and when Kyoko's finished there she runs Toyota in and hits a belly to belly, followed by a snap DDT before working a camel clutch, stretching that further with a body scissors. Toyota finds the ropes, and when Kyoko goes for a suplex, Toyota gets behind and applies the rolling cradle for a near fall. Toyota tries for a moonsault, but gets caught with a German suplex off the top. But when Kyoko tries to go up top, she gets booted to the floor. It looks like Toyota's going big off the top, but Kyoko's able to catch her and slam her down to the floor, the champ landing pretty damn hard, and Kyoko follows that by whipping Toyota into the guardrail and clotheslining her over it, the crowd bubbling up pretty nicely by this point. Back in the ring, and Kyoko Irish whips Toyota. However, we get a successful Manami roll for a near fall and another moonsault attempt. This time Kyoko gets the knees up. Kyoko tries for a lariat but gets body chopped over the top, and Toyota does a messy yet effective no-hands plunger. She's not done there. She pulls a table out, positions Kyoko on it, and while she doesn't get it the first time, she hits a no-hand somersault plunger on the prone Kyoko. This one goes better than the one against Kong. Toyota doesn't land on her frickin' head, and the table certainly bends a fair bit. Still an absolutely wild spot, but what do you expect? She is, after all, the Frank Lloyd Wright of Dangerous Aerial Flight. We're back in with Toyota trying for Japanese Ocean, Kyoko finding the ropes. However, Toyota counters the whip counter, hitting the Japanese Ocean suplex for another 2 count. Again, the champ looks for an aerial assault, but this time Kyoko perks up, runs up, and hits the flying head scissors. And yet the parity is amazing. Kyoko's run-up back elbow is also intercepted by Toyota, who hits a huge sunset bomb. More big near falls, but Toyota now looks to finish, getting Kyoko up, hitting the Japanese Ocean Cyclone, but it's only 2. She goes for it again, but Kyoko's able to get off the shoulders and turn Toyota inside out with the lariat. While Kyoko then misses a clothesline from the ropes, she's able to turn another Manami roll into a powerbomb for a near fall, and from there she gets Toyota up, hits the Niagara driver, and again it's a 2 count. Kyoko's fully pumped, but the next Niagara driver attempt is countered by a roll for another close call, and Toyota looks to go up top. Again though, Kyoko intercepts with the run-up arm drag, seemingly having all the answers for the champ at this point in the bout. We end up with another big fight up top. Both of these wrestlers are so fast that it's kind of hard to get any kind of aerial move off. Toyota looks to have the advantage until Kyoko locks in, getting her up for the super slam. However, Toyota hits a telling blow, countering that slam with an absolutely wild victory roll from the top. It's a big count, but the bottom rope saves Kyoko. Toyota's at it again, looking for the cyclone. However, Kyoko gets out, one clothesline sends Toyota to the ropes, Kyoko hits 2 more huge ones with Toyota on the ropes, but gets caught on a third with Toyota hitting a German suplex for another very close fall. Still Kyoko's defiant, roaring at Toyota, goading her. The champ hits another German suplex, the challenger still shouting, followed by another, and in the end, the challenger is still here. Toyota tries to whip Kyoko, but the challenger's faster than expected, catching Manami with a huge lariat and turning her inside out again, Billy Gunn or Rikishi style. Again Kyoko's going for it. She gets Toyota up and hits a second Niagara driver, but the champ still kicks out. Indeed, she still has fight, attacking on the get-up and trying for the Japanese Ocean bomb. Kyoko escapes, but gets caught again and hit with a second Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. And that's not the match. Kyoko kicked out. Toyota looks to finish this once and for all, getting Kyoko up top and looking to hit the Cyclone from there. Kyoko's able to escape, but gets booted down. Toyota instead looks for it in the centre of the ring, but Kyoko escapes again, hits a huge German, and suddenly, well, the moment could be at hand. She's up immediately, snapping into a third Niagara driver, but shockingly the shoulders up. However, Kyoko will not hesitate. She picks up a seemingly lifeless Toyota, and even though she at first slumps off the shoulders, she picks her back up again, seemingly for another Niagara, but now she drapes her over her back and... oh man. The Victoria Driver. The new move, and the one that finally wins Kyoko Inoue the red belt at 24 minutes 52. The creation of a quite legendary super finisher, and the crowning of a new ace. A tearful Kyoko Inoue is presented with the title and the trophy, also having a respectful exchange with the now former champion. It's a huge moment, the cap of a particularly wonderful couple of years for Kyoko Inoue. She's been gunning for the top spot for so long, and at last she's there. And unsurprisingly, it came after another great match. It's a very logical end to the story. Kyoko Inoue needed something new, something that was befitting of an ace, in order to finally take Manami Toyota down, and she found it in the shape of the Victoria Driver. The move that would, of course, become even more famous later on as Kenta Kobashi's Burning Hammer, a move that's a little different in setup and impact, but certainly takes plenty from Kyoko's driver. As with damn near every match here, it's one to watch. While on the whole the May 1995 Korakuen Hall draw is the most famous Inoue-Toyota match and undoubtedly the best one, it is very much worth it to go through the whole story, finishing with the win that finally secures Kyoko Inoue's position as the new top ace of Zenjo. She'll be the one leading the company into 1997, even as the waters look ever choppier behind the scenes. Because of course the story doesn't end here. This was initially all about the red belt, the progression from Kong to Toyota, Toyota to Kong, Kong to Kansai, Kansai to Toyota, Toyota to Kyoko. We may have reached that last stop, but the train isn't slowing down. This is now about All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling as a whole. We've discussed business plenty over the course of this series, the sense that forces are building up to something pretty bad. Well now, they are pretty close to erupting. The Dark Ages will now begin. First off, let's take a quick look at what Kyoko Inoue did as champion. I should stress again, before we get into the huge problems, that the in-ring action is still very much quality. You can look at damn near any Kyoko Inoue match, or indeed most any AJW match really, from 1997 without any context, have a good time watching it, and think that everything must be all gravy. The standard has not dropped. It's just everything else that's the trouble. Anyway, Zenjo went even bigger than normal when it came to positioning Kyoko as the ace. Her first title defense was, in actual fact, a unification match, one where the IWA and All Pacific singles titles are on the line, and the winner would essentially hold Zenjo's own Triple Crown. Oh, and the holder of those other two titles just so happens to be Kyoko's tag partner. Takako Inoue won both the IWA and All Pacific titles from Reggie Bennett on 21st of November 96, and now that Kyoko's the champ? Well, it's kinda natural that the two tag partners end up clashing, and while they may be partners, and indeed friends, Takako's the last person who you would expect to give any quarter. The match is typically great, two wrestlers who know each other inside out going at it, Takako at times coming pretty damn close to the victory. But of course, it's not a big surprise that Kyoko is the one who wins it, doing so after 3 straight Niagara drivers. Nothing quite says ace like holding all 3 of the main Zenjo singles titles, after all. Kyoko's next defense comes at Wrestling Queendom in March against Aja Kong. Again, it's hardly something for me to tell you that this match is one to watch. It's Kyoko and Aja going at it for nearly 30 minutes after all, with Kyoko once again triumphing over the Jungle Emperor. The problems at Zenjo are really becoming clear by this point, however. While initially the attendance for the year's Queendom was announced at 8,300, it was actually closer to 5,000, and this is still at the 17,000-seater Yokohama Arena. I mentioned way back in the beginning that the 9,000 AJW drew for the 1995 Queendom was considered a major disappointment. Well, this is closer to a major disaster. The attendances are really sinking and the financial problems are becoming common knowledge. While initially they start 1997 by giving top stars more days off in order to save some costs, this soon changes when attendances crater yet further for all the house shows, with a pledge that every star will be on every show. Oh, and Zenjo are still running hundreds of shows. They're still out there near enough every night, sometimes 2 shows a day, even though a significant chunk of the house shows don't even break 1,000, and they even fail at times to fill half of the Korakuen Hall. Indeed, the newer Joshi promotions, Gaia and JD, are now beginning to outdraw AJW in certain venues. You may think that Zenjo should run less shows, but they don't know how to do that. They've ran this sort of schedule since the heyday of the Crush Gals, and they can't stop it. All the troubles aside, a new challenger is very much being prepped for Kyoko Inoue. Kaoru Ito gets a significant singles push in 1997, drawing with Aja Kong in January and defeating Manami Toyota at Queendom to earn a title shot. When Kyoko and Ito go at it on May the 11th in Nagoya in front of a billed 4,750 people, that number alone would be significantly down from previous shows at the Aichi Prefectural Gymnasium, but the truth and attendance is probably half that number. They go all the way to a 60-minute draw, and after the match Kyoko decides to return her title belts, saying that a true world champion should always pin her challenger. This does 2 things. Of course, it sets up intrigue for a rematch that happens in Sapporo in June where Kyoko Inoue ends up winning, but it also signals an end to the rather brief Zenjo Triple Crown experiment. Only the red belt is on the line in the Inoue-Ito rematch. Clearly those other titles, the IWA and All Pacific straps, are needed elsewhere, around other people's waists. The 2 shows that AJW run in Sapporo, where the fate of all these singles titles are decided, on June 17th and 18th, are once again poorly attended, and the shows don't really have the atmosphere of years past. The faithful are here, but it's hard to find much optimism about the state of Zenjo. When reading recaps of the company's performance, old observers and the like, it's pretty clear that AJW are trying anything to see just what on earth can stick. They decide to up the healing as well as the blood on the cards, with the main architects of violence being a resurgent and even more sadistic Las Cachorras Orientales. Etsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda don't care who they tear apart, even losing the odd match by disqualification, something that almost never happens in AJW. From a quality standpoint, this is LCO entering their greatest period. Still, it doesn't as yet move the needle in AJW. And from there we get to the really major signifier of trouble. Suddenly, people are leaving. Toshio Yamada, a long-time stalwart, finds herself in the position of either retiring or going elsewhere, and AJW are happy to just let it happen, still rather arrogantly thinking that a 27-year-old who is basically a mid-carder at this stage can't have much to offer. And so, she decides to go elsewhere. She jumps ship to Gaio in July. Zenjo may not think that to be a significant blow, but the next one sure is. On the 14th of July, Aja Kong announces her intention to leave All Japan Women, and it's pretty clear that her departure is not a retirement, as she wishes to work against the stars of Gaia and JD. As a matter of fact, her plans end up going far beyond that. While initially Aja's plan is to be a freelancer, she is soon approached by Rossi Agawa, who's also going to be leaving AJW with the intention of starting a new promotion, that ended up being ARSION. Kon would be the founder, and Agawa would be its president. Muiko Yoshida, at this stage someone who has never quite made main event level after repeated major injuries, will also be along for the ride, and ex-Joshi Saki Hasegawa will be working the office as manager. This new promotion will debut at the start of the new year. Meanwhile, Aja continues to work AJW commitments until September. With yet more new promotions forming, I think you know what's coming. It's time for an exodus. There are a lot of other details to look at, things that go beyond the pages of old observers. But for now we go to a specific show, August 20th's Brightness at the Nippon Budokan. It's another pretty miserable night attendance-wise. AJW announced 9,100, but the reality is that around 6,000 people were at the hall. It is perhaps important to also place the show in a context that it was just a few days after the shocking Plum Mariko tragedy, and you wondered how that also might have affected wrestlers' mindsets. But yeah, this is the night where everything came to a head. As far as the wrestling goes, we do have something significant, the last major chapter in the rivalry between Aja Kong and Manami Toyota. As ever, the action is sensational. The pair run through all the hits and then some, the beats that sent them into the stratosphere over the past few years, that make them perhaps the greatest pairing in the history of Joshi, and in the end, they can't beat one another. The match ends in a 30-minute draw, and it's an emotional finale to Kong's AJW singles career. Still, this meeting isn't what people were talking about. They were more talking about what happened at the start of the show. Kyoko Inoue, in an unplanned move, announced to the crowd that she was going to leave the promotion. This was a pretty big shock, not exactly the long goodbye that Aja had. Oh, and Kyoko was still the red belt champion. This move kind of removing any doubt from the result of the match she has later on against Yumiko Hotta for the title, in which Hotta finally managed to win the big strap. The move obviously created a fair bit of tumult in the back, but as we'll see, while it hadn't been announced yet, it was already well known by this stage that Rossi Agawa and Aja Kong were looking to form a new promotion, and Kyoko Inoue wasn't leaving to be a part of that setup. As a matter of fact, she didn't have too much of a plan at all at this point, but she knew that the time was right. The exodus gets worse in September. Etsuko Mita, Mima Shimoda, Chapurito Asari, Mariko Yoshida, Saya Endo, Yukashina, Rie Tamada, and Yumi Fukawa all announced their departure. Yoshida, Tamada, and Fukawa will be joining Kong at ARSION. Junior wrestlers Misei Genki, Yoshiko Tamura, and Tanny Mouse also leave, and it's reported that they're leaving because they're frustrated over not getting paid. In The Observer, it's reported that the wages for these juniors are months behind. In actual fact, the situation was a lot worse than that. And here we must go to the interviews with the main players, the ones conducted by Bull Nakano on her YouTube channel. It's obviously bad news if the juniors aren't getting paid, although it's hardly surprising considering Zenjo's management. But what if the champion isn't getting paid? The ace of the company, the person who the whole booking is built around? Well, that's what happened. Kyoko Inoue says in her interview with Bull that she often had complaints from the juniors about not getting paid. Eventually she checked her own accounts and realised that Zenjo hadn't paid her in 5 months. When she questioned the office about this, they say that she never came to pick the money up and, well, it's not there anymore because AJW is completely broke. They don't have the money to pay anybody. The only time a wrestler really gets paid at this point is if a venue that AJW's won in a showing pays specifically for their booking. It's through this that we still see the odd appearances from the folks who leave, including Kyoko herself, in the months after this exodus. But venues are only going to pay specifically for the major stars, certainly not the juniors, who are living hand to mouth, splitting cash amongst themselves. And so Kyoko makes the decision to leave, and indeed to form her own company, thinking specifically that the juniors, well, they need to be paid. It becomes clear that she's not invited to the ARSION setup. Wrestlers like her aren't the sort that Rossiagawa is interested in. In her words, Ross is only interested in taking the pretty girls. Kyoko's promotion was announced by the end of 1997, and it's called Neo Ladies. Tani, Genki and Tamura, the aforementioned departed juniors, join Kyoko in the new promotion alongside Mita, Shimoda, Asari, Endo and Yukashina. What then of the wrestlers who actually stay in All Japan Women? There are certainly a few who do, despite everything. Yumiko Hotta, Manami Toyota, Kaoru Ito, Tomoko Watanabe, Takako Inoue, Kumiko Meikawa, as well as juniors Momo Nakanishi and Nane Takahashi, all publicly declare their loyalty to AJW in September, promising that they will rebuild the company. Toyota, in her interview with Bull, said that while she did initially have plans to retire at the age of 25, she mainly stayed on at Zenjo because she wanted to properly pass the torch on to the next generation. And yet, things are a phenomenal mess. It's reported that the Matsunaga brothers' debt is in the region of over 2.5 billion yen. In 1997, that amounted to 22 million in US dollars. It's quite clear by this stage what has to happen. In October, AJW files for bankruptcy. All of the Matsunaga's many real estate holdings, basically the main cause of this debt, are sold or taken, including the big AJW complex, and some big shows were cancelled. Zenjo did intend to run Sumo Hall again at the end of 97, but the show was dropped due to lack of interest. Now, this bankruptcy does not mean the immediate end of Zenjo. AJW would continue to run, but in a much smaller form. It is at this stage that what we call the Dark Ages of Joshi do begin in the eyes of some people, including myself. The Dark Ages has nothing to do with in-ring quality. There's damn good stuff in all promotions. But the scene is fragmented, blown apart, and the commercial days are over. Joshi is basically part of the indie scene. Some promotions tend to stick together more than others, particularly the now old guard of AJW, JWP and LLPW, although pretty much all the promotions do often end up working together as the years go by, especially seeing as pretty much everyone is freelance now. Gaia, ARSION, Neo and JD have to work with the older promotions, and the older promotions have to work with them. Gaia is now the biggest promotion in Joshi, filled with established stars such as Chigusa Nagayo, Akira Hakuto, and Toshio Yamada, not to mention making big names of their own like Miko Satomura and Kaoru, but it's not near any kind of level that Zenjo was at its peak. It should be noted, by the way, that some Dark Ages wrestlers do have positive things to say about the post-bankruptcy Zenjo. Kaio Numi, a junior who initially had a very tough time fitting in at AJW, to the point where she quit no less than 5 times in the mid-90s due to the bullying, pressure and punishments, said in her Bull interview that generally the crew got on a lot better after 1997, with there being less bullying and less of the traditional hierarchy where juniors wouldn't say boo to a goose and would rarely even say a word to the seniors. After 1997, the crew hung out together a lot more. Also, despite everything, AJW still has a slot on Fuji TV, where they've basically always been. Only now they're part of a block of women's combat sport programming called Fighting Goddess ATHENA, and there's one episode a month. If you ever see someone refer to post-bankruptcy Zenjo as the ATHENA years, that's what they're referring to. Now, while there is a lot more to say in the future about Joshi's Dark Ages, a long and grey period that lasted an awful lot longer than a decade, it certainly is a time that's worth examining when it comes to the in-ring action. After all, it's filled with people who, in previous generations, would have been absolute stars. And yet there is still an air of depression about a lot of it. After all, most of the promotions I've mentioned are long gone, all folding as Pro-Res contracted further. Neo Ladies, ARSION, JD, Gaia, and ultimately, in April of 2005, All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling closed after 37 years in the business. The tales of their endings are varied. Aja Kong and Rossi Ogawa's partnership blew up over directional disagreements in 2001, with Aja leaving ARSION and then suing Rossi for continuing to advertise her. Eventually, the promotion was taken over by Yumiko Hotta in 2003 and renamed A to Z, and it ultimately closed in 2006. JD and Neo both struggled to get a significant foothold, and in the end they both simply ran out of money and talent, closing in 2007 and 2010 respectively. It's long been thought, if not completely confirmed by everybody, that the main reason why Aja Kong and Kyoko Inoue are both still working today is largely due to the debts they incurred through running their promotions. Indeed, Kyoko freely said to Bull in her interview that running Neo cost her all her previous earnings and then some, and that she was still paying off debts from it. Gaia, as the top Joshi promotion, actually could have potentially continued beyond 2005. However, Chigusa Nagaya was thinking a lot about retirement, seeing as most of her peers had already hung up her boots, and she made the decision to close Gaia, with the last show happening on April the 10th. As it happens, this was only a week before what would be AJW's final show on April the 17th, 2005. The Matsunagas never came close to clearing the huge debt from their real estate business. Indeed, that only ever got bigger through interest, with AJW stars just paid hand to mouth. No guaranteed contracts, just the crew splitting up the cash at the end of each night. Eventually, the pressure from the tax officers and, how you say, other forces the brothers were indebted to became too much to deal with, and AJW had to shut up shop. Tragically, one of the Matsunagas, Kunimatsu, also known as referee Jimmy Kayama, took his own life months after Zenjo's closure, in the hope that his debt would die with him and that his family wouldn't be ruined. All of the other Matsunaga brothers, Takashi, Kenji, Toshikuni, and the unknown eldest brother, the one who was never involved with the business, have since passed away due to illness and old age. With the end of all of these promotions, the Joshi landscape was even smaller. JWP and LLPW are now the elder promotions, JWP eventually closing in 2017, and LLPW actually still going today, still featuring the likes of Shinobu Kandori and Takako Inoue, who joined LLPW properly in 2005, and has pretty much been joined at the hip with Kandori since then. Other setups, including Mayumi Yazaki's Oz Academy, founded in 1998, were also hanging around, and other new promotions started. Miko Satomura starts Sendai Girls in 2005, Emi Sakura's Ice Ribbon in 2006, Wave, formed from the ashes of JD in 2007, Kyoko Inoue starts Diana in 2010, and 2010 is also when World Wonder Ring Stardom is founded. The action was out there, although it's even more fragmented and exceptionally tough for fans to follow. If you were a fan of Joshi, these were terrible times, and the relative success that Joshi enjoys nowadays may well be a great relief. Even if for those who were fans at these more troubled times, there's always going to be the fear that it could all just blow up again one day. On the other side of things, the show still goes on, even as the trouble brews, and that's been a big part of what this series is all about. We've seen so many incredible matches from a time back in the mid-90s when Joshi was still getting a lot of hype and attention, particularly from Western fans who found it and loved it, just as they did any other form of pro-res. We didn't think too much about the state of the business, never quite armchair analysing it the same way you'd analyse something like WWF or whatever. We didn't know much about that. We just knew it was damn good, and even when you do know the backstories, the tough tales, the business woes and so on, if anything it just helps with understanding it all, beyond simply enjoying the cool moves in front of you. That character just makes the work of the likes of Manami Toyota, Kyoko Inoue, Aja Kong, Takako Inoue, Mima Shimoda, Dynamite Kansai and all the other amazing wrestlers we've seen even better. And so, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, hopefully you've enjoyed this AJW Red Belt series, and until the next time, bye for now.